Good evening, Force users, non-Force users, all beings in the known universe. You are tuning in to another episode of the Jedi In Exile. Today's one follows the theme that we've been going with the last few weeks of reviewing all of the films in the Star Wars franchise. So today's one is Solo. So this was the Solo: A Star Wars Story, similar in that respects to Rogue One. I think we've kind of got Solo to thank for there not being any other feature films really too much on the horizon. I know there's a couple to come over the next couple of years, but this kind of put to the end the thought of right Disney saying like we're going to do a Kenobi film that really turned Disney's focus towards series because it wasn't well reviewed when it came out.
No.
Now, personally, I think there's some good points. I think it's a good story, good storyline. There's some good characters. There's also some really poor moments in there, which we'll delve into. Uh, but Matt, talk to me about your, I suppose, main thoughts of the film.
Yeah, so interesting one for me, I think. This is one that when I first watched this, I really didn't enjoy it and was actually quite annoyed. And I think we'll come on to some of the reasons that I was annoyed when we delve into some specifics. But actually, as I've gone back and watched it again and again, as I do with all Star Wars movies, um, it's grown on me quite a bit. And actually, I don't. I think my initial reaction was a massive knee jerk reaction to it, and now actually looking at it and getting into it, I feel like I enjoy it a little bit more. Like, and when I say a little bit more, like considerably more than the first time I watched it, and it's actually a movie that I would sit down and watch now.
Yeah, I can go along with that as well. I didn't think it was that great when it first came out. I think that it's slightly different to Rogue One in that Rogue One kind of stands alone as a standalone movie, that it's actually still quite a good film, just on its own. I feel like Solo really does fit into the Star Wars universe, and you have to be a Star Wars fan, I think, to watch it and appreciate it.
This
I think
was
Rogue One was very different.
this was a backstory movie.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
Rogue One was a war movie set in the Star Wars universe that told the story of the Death Star plans and the kind of birthing of the rebellion, let's call it.
Yeah,
This was very much we have a gap here that we need to fill within our franchise to tell this person's origin story, and that's what they did.
yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people's and listen, don't get me wrong, the worst bit about the film for me, and I think the bit that really stuck with people is this was the backstory of obviously Han Solo, and they do clear this up that his name is Han, not Han. There has been a huge debate, and there is a line in the film where Woody Harrelson's character, uh, who's called Beckett, he says, "Oh, Han," and Han Solo says, "Oh, it's Han, but okay." But the worst bit about this film is this is supposed to be a backstory about how Han Solo became this great smuggler, and he gets his last name. This is the worst bit of the film for me. He gets his last name because an Imperial officer says he's on his own.
Because he has
So
no family name
he's
and
like,
he has no
yeah,
family.
he's like, what's your name? And he's like, well, Han. He's like, Han, what? Who's your people? And he's like, I don't know, I'm on my own. So the guy's like, all right, Solo. I'm like, this isn't the start of a Jason Derulo song.
So
Like, how? Like that for me was where I was like, oh my god, you've just completely disregarded this character.
this was my big this was one of my big sticking points with this movie, right? And this is why I had such a knee-jerk reaction to it. So that in itself, I thought personally, and I'm probably going to get slated in the comments for this, poor storytelling, lazy storytelling.
Yeah,
they've
it was
bas-
lazy.
they've
Yeah,
basically gone, we need to explain his name somehow, let's do it with a throwaway line, rather
yeah,
than actually there was nothing wrong with just his name being Han Solo from the word go. There is no reason that it couldn't have been the case. What then really frustrated me is that one of my favourite um, book series from the Legends part of Star Wars universe is the Han Solo trilogy, which it does serves exactly the same purpose as this movie, right? It's the origin story of Han, Chewie getting the Falcon.
Han.
I'm gonna keep saying Han. I don't care. Um, like him getting the Falcon from Lando, like all of the stuff that we see in this movie, the key stuff that we see in this movie, should I say, is covered in that book trilogy. And so for them to completely put that aside, which is fine, that's what happened when Disney came in, I'd already made peace with that. But to then be so lazy with such a key character to this franchise, it cut me deep, mate. I'm not gonna lie, like I really felt it.
Yeah, I think that for me is one of the worst bits of the film. There's a couple of other bits that I don't particularly like, but the actual storyline itself, I think, is quite good. It explains obviously how he gets the Falcon. I think that Donald Glover as Lando is like perfect casting. I think he plays Lando really great. This like smooth operator. We can see him there for those watching on YouTube. You can see him. I thought that the Beckett character played by Woody Harrelson was a great addition. That kind of um, person showing Han the ropes almost of being a smuggler. Like he takes him into his like group because Han's actually an Imperial soldier. You've then got, of course, the what's always in a Star Wars film, the lovable droid, um, which we can see there was voiced by Phoebe.
Waller-Bridge.
Yeah, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, um, who provides the comedy. I think that this film has a lot, and it also explains they plug her into the Falcon, don't they? And it goes back to that line from I think it's Empire where 3PO's like, I don't know what's inside your mainframe, but it's speaking like a foreign language.
So I'm going to pick up on a couple of things that you've said here, because obviously you've rattled through a few of the key characters, absolutely fine. If you're watching this review and you haven't seen the movie, probably go watch the movie, then come back.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of gibberish otherwise.
So, but where you said there, you were like, oh, you know, we see all of these awesome things because we see him win the Falcon, we see kind of him do the Kessel Run, and it explains that line from A New Hope. All of that,
stuff.
and all of that stuff was in the books that I absolutely adored, and so that's where I feel like, fine, if you're gonna, I've got no issue, right, with them using that as kind of a point of reference.
They can't do a solo film and not do the Kessel Run and not involve the Falcon, can they? I mean,
no, but it was literally the same concept, which is like goes. Okay, they changed a few of the details, but like go to Kessel, liberate the Wookiees, like all of that kind of stuff, which is what happened in those books. If anyone's not had a chance to read those books, I genuinely really recommend doing them. I know they're legends, so they don't really mean anything anymore, but really good books. The Han Solo trilogy.
Yeah,
So
I
good.
have to. The only other thing I suppose that really, and this is something that I didn't think to begin with, but now having gone back and watched it a few more times, every time I watch it, I don't like that Han's character at the end does something so noble, and that will seem like a weird statement, but the whole point of A New Hope and how shocking it is that Han, takes his money and is going to pay Jabba and then comes back, and
So,
that is like so out of character that no one saw it coming. Whereas actually, if you knew Han previously, you'd be like, well, yeah, he's going to come back. He's going to do the right thing. All because of this ending in Solo. I felt like he should have been, the bad guy. And I get that when he shoots Beckett, spoiler alert, that's almost seen as like a moment where he's turning into the Han Solo, the ragtag, the Han shot first kind of bloke. But he still does the
but
right thing, the good thing, and I
but
don't feel like that was good for his character.
so I agree with you to a certain extent, but I actually don't think it ruins the character as much as, like, I disagree as well. And I don't think it ruins the film as much as you're making out. And I'm going to defend the movie a little bit here, in that I
No,
actually,
I don't think that ruins the film.
I
I think that slightly makes me lose a bit of respect for Han's character.
but I don't know. I disagree slightly, because I think what it actually did was set up this whole kind of, he did the right thing and got burnt doing the right thing, because he gets burnt by Kira at the end, right, where she
Yeah,
does.
buggers.
And I think that is what then lays the foundation for why he behaves the way that he behaves in, um,
But it's the
like
whole
in the
Beckett
original
says, you
trilogy.
can't trust anybody.
And so,
Like,
so this is what I
you
mean.
shouldn't trust anybody.
I think it's setting that foundation of, kind of the he tried every time he's done the right thing,
Yeah, I get that. Yeah,
he's been burnt, and so I actually respect that a little bit more, and think it's not as, it doesn't have as big an impact as you're saying. I understand it. I think it's two ways they could have gone with it. They could have had him be like that to begin with and just set that as like the tone, or they could have done this. But let's not
I
forget
kind of
that
wanted like his upbringing to have, like, when because he's on Corellia and he's basically a street rat. I was hoping that would have turned him into like that kind of person already that Beckett kind of molds him into. The like can't trust anybody. He seems I don't know, maybe at the start of the movie he seems a bit too green, maybe.
but I think we need to, what we need to remember is at this point there were plans for Solo 2.
Yeah, yeah, of
There was
course,
there
yeah,
was
yeah.
going to be another movie. So
Gonna
that
be a
would have,
Canadian movie as well.
told that story a bit more, and which
Yeah, of
maybe
course, yeah.
helps explain why they did what they did. And I think that the way that he is on the streets of Corellia, I actually think it was. I think this is good storytelling, because I think it shows that it's that whole big fish in a small pond situation. He's all cocky on the streets of Corellia because he knows them. He's grown up on them, and then they throw him out into the wide world. And he's all about that whole, oh, I'll be a pilot, like, in record time and all of that kind of stuff. And actually,
Yeah.
that's not what ends up happening.
Yeah, no, I like his character throughout the entire film. Really, I think the characters in this film are really, really good. Um, I think that yeah, I like Han's cockiness, and you can kind of really see that this is a younger Han. So he is like, and obviously that's done on purpose, that he is similar to the Han of A New Hope, um, and the Han in Empire. So I do like Han in this film. I am going to go on record and say that there's just a couple of things I think they could have played it slightly differently. That he needed to be very different, almost in one respect, to the A New Hope Han. Um, and he wasn't in my eyes. But listen, he was still a great character, and I love the other characters like Lando. I think he's absolutely brilliant. That is like spot on. And of course, we see a bit more of Lando in the animated in Rebels. He features, I wouldn't say heavily, but he features in quite a few episodes of that. So there was kind of a little bit of material for Donald Glover to look at with that. But the other characters were great. I like the whole Crimson Dawn angle of the film. And with Dryden Voss, who you can see again, those watching on YouTube, you can see there, played by Paul Bettany. Yeah, and he's got the scars on his face, hasn't he? And he's obviously seen as like the head of Crimson Dawn, and then we suddenly see Kira, who has managed to escape Corellia, and she's got the Crimson Dawn necklace there, and she's got the stamp on her hand, hasn't she? Like the brand. Um, and I think it's weird because you obviously know that Han doesn't end up with her, but you're almost throughout the film like wanting
Rooting,
them to
yeah.
get together, like you're rooting for them, aren't you? So it was interesting. You get about half an hour in and you see her again in this particular scene, and you're thinking, wow, how are they going to play this one out? Um, yeah, and it's that for me it was really good storytelling throughout this film in respect to that specific storyline with the two of them.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the Crimson Dawn aspect in general. Obviously, we know from kind of some of the other material that there's this kind of syndicate that's being set up by Maul in the background. And there's a couple of times that Dryden kind of makes reference to you know who I answer to type thing to Kira, and everyone's like, who, and then we get the big old reveal at the
Yeah,
end.
and this is we're gonna have to talk about this now. Like this is what's mental, and for people who have only ever watched live action, i.e., the 6 Star Wars films and Rogue One and Solo, you've like you'd be like, what? He was chopped in half back in 1999.
Yeah, what is going on?
Like, yeah, what the hell? How the hell can he be alive? Whereas obviously to us old lags who have seen Clone Wars and seen that develop, it's like, oh yeah, Maul's there, of course he is. Like, but at this point we didn't know the conclusion to Clone Wars, so we'd seen Maul in Rebels, so that we knew he survived there, but we hadn't seen the season 7 of Clone Wars, so we now know a bit more about obviously
Like setting up the
Maul's
crime
story.
syndicate and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So we know that he is the head of Crimson Dawn.
And this is,
Um,
well, he's the head of the whole thing, isn't he?
yeah,
This is the point. Like, so
yeah,
he is the head of Crimson Dawn, but he's kind of the head of this whole syndicate, which is why Dryden's kind of comment about I have a weak alliance with the
the
Pikes,
pipes. Yeah.
becomes really important, because that kind of throws that context about this whole crime syndicate that's been set up.
And that's why it's such a shame that we, in one way, didn't get a Solo 2 because Maul probably would have featured in it,
I think
and not just this cameo at the end. I feel like he wouldn't have been obviously the main part in the film, but I feel like he would have featured in a fair bit.
so. I'm really interested off the back of watching this again, for this review. I'm really keen to go and read. There's a new run of comics come out which is called Crimson Reign,
Okay.
which focuses on Kira after all of this stuff. I think she goes and trains with Vader at one point, and kind of learns some combat skills from Vader and stuff. So I'm really interested to go and have a look at that and see how that all kind of plays out a little bit. But I think the actual kind of crime syndicate played out really well and felt. I think it would have been really easy for this to just feel like a plot device, just feel like a reason to get Han to go to Kessel and like to kind of enable those things. And they're only short scenes, to be fair, the ones that actually feature kind of Dryden and the whole Crimson Dawn setup, but they're really important, and I actually think they're handled really well. I wouldn't be surprised to find out that it's only kind of 5 minutes, 10 minutes worth of the actual movie screen time is based around that stuff.
Yeah.
But it feels like it's much more because they fleshed it out so well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the stuff about the comics is really cool. I mean, Kira training with Vader is pretty awesome in itself. Like,
I think that
that's
if that's something you guys want to see us kind of delve into a little bit more and explore on the channel a little bit more, let us know in the comments down below. We can always look at some kind of comics, graphic novels, kind of stretch out into some different mediums a little bit, for you guys, and bring you all of that content as well. But
Can I just say the last thing I probably I just want to focus on that we haven't so far is I like how this storyline it didn't. I really like how they brought Chewie in, and how Han and Chewie actually became, friends and almost partners. I like that Han can randomly speak a bit of Wookiee as well. Um, and how they're brought together in the friendship, and they didn't overplay it. They didn't, make it really cheesy. It was believable that how they became friends, and I really really enjoyed it. And then at the end, obviously, it's the whole punch it,
do,
like when they're in the Falcon and Lando's been injured and they're having to do the Kessel Run and escape and do all this. It was a really cool film with those two throughout the course of the film getting to know each other.
so the things that I really kind of liked about this was, the introduction we get. We don't get this big grand, this is going to be Han meeting Chewie for the first time. Like, it's this unknown monster that he gets thrown in with. And actually, when they're first there, Chewie's just like, who are you? Like, why would I listen to you? Type thing. So to kind of see that, but then pretty quickly we see this the kind of the bond. I
Yeah,
really one of the bits that sticks with me. There's two really kind of key bits other than the punch it that you've just mentioned, because obviously that's absolutely iconic. But there's the bit where they're doing the train, like the train robbery,
yeah,
and he goes, "What's your name?" And he's like, "Oh, Chewbacca," and he's like,
yeah,
"Ain't no way I'm calling you that. That's too long. Like Chewie, I'm gonna call you Chewie," which was really cool. And then not just the punch it, but that bit where Han's obviously still got his thing going with Kira, and she like sits down with him because he's like, "Oh, I need a co-pilot," and she sits down with him, and he
yeah,
spouts off all the stuff, and she's like, "Yes, we do need to do that. If I knew how to do it." And then she gets out of the way, and Chewie sits down, and it's like that first Han
yeah. It's like,
Chewie in the cockpit of the
welcome to
Falcon.
the welcome to the start of the rest of your life kind of
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
Like,
and I
and
just love it.
yeah, I liked it as well. How it's just it was one line where um Chewie's talking to Han, and I think it's in the Falcon's cockpit. Han's like, "You're 150 years old," so we get some kind of, and we'll know that from the expanded
And
universe.
you look
Uh,
great.
yeah, but it's one of those that unless you've read some of the expanded universe, you wouldn't know how old Chewie is. So that was just something that was quite cool.
I,
Um,
their dynamic towards the end of the movie really started to become that kind of the
like
dynamic that
I'd
we're
do anything
used
for
to.
you. Yeah,
Yeah, that dynamic that we're used to in the other main saga movies.
yeah.
That kind of really close friendship bond.
It explains how they are in A New Hope and Empire and A Return of the Jedi. Like when Han's in Return of the Jedi, the moment really stuck in my head while I was watching Solo with these two was when Han's getting his command force ready to go and destroy the rebel base, and he's like, "My squad is ready, but I don't have a command crew." And Chewie gives it the old, "Rrrr," and Han's like, "Oh, I didn't want to, volunteer for you," but it's like, well, of course Chewie's going to do it, and I think that comes from him. Sorry, my dogs are wandering around.
No, it's
And I think that comes from them have been together like probably between 15 and 20 years at this point from A New Hope. So, you're looking almost 25 years to Return of the Jedi. And it's like, the bond they've got is just second to none. And this film is the start of that. And I think the director, Ron Howard, who of course is a legendary director, I think he played that relationship really, really well. It was well thought out.
I actually think that contributed to a lighter tone in the movie because we got this kind of a little bit of comedy, and I
Yeah, it didn't
actually
need to be that big grand, like, "You're Han, I'm Chewbacca, we're going to be best friends after some
yeah,
Titanic event."
yeah,
Like, it gradually fell into being, we're really good friends.
yeah, and I think this whole movie actually did that really well. Um, Lando obviously had to be in there because of the whole winning the Falcon thing. I thought that was handled really well. One of the things that I was really, really concerned about with Lando was when I found out that Donald Glover had been cast for this. I was concerned that this was a Disney are trying to appeal to the new generation, the younger generation. So what have they done? They've got somebody who I know has acting credits. I'm not belittling his acting career at all, but it was like, oh, he's big as Childish Gambino as a music star. Like we're gonna cast somebody who we're doing it for the name and for the name only. And actually,
Yeah, recognition.
he did a really really good job.
Yeah, he did, and we know that since this as well, he's gone on and acted in different films, and he is actually a genuinely good actor. But I think he plays Lando really well, and that's something I suppose it's handy for these actors when you're playing a backstory. You can see how they need to be. Like we've heard Ewan McGregor talk about that he studied Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan, and so he tried to, he tried to act more like Obi-Wan as the films went on. Sorry, as Alec Guinness. These actors have got a lot of help because Donald Glover will look at Billy D. Williams' performance and be like, okay, that's kind of how I need to be, just maybe a
Tone
toned
it
down
down it,
version
yeah.
or a toned up version because he's probably a lot more cocky and arrogant than he is in episode 5.
Yeah, massively. Um, I
So I
completely
loved it.
completely agree. The one thing that I really enjoyed was getting to see Sabak as well
Yeah,
as a
yeah, yeah.
concept. And again, fully taken from the Han Solo trilogy books. He wins it in a game of sabacc. Game rules slightly different, and some of the things work slightly differently. The sabacc that we see in this is actually a variation called Corellian Spikes, not the traditional sabacc game that exists within the universe. But no, like I thought,
homework for this episode.
you know it, mate. You know it. But I thought it was really cool. Really, really enjoyed it. One thing that we, I guess, can't finish talking about this without talking about is the legendary Star Wars actor who sometimes goes kind of under the radar a little bit, should we say? That made his return here is the one and only Warwick Davis.
The old WD.
You know it. Who surprisingly, and I said this to you, and this genuinely I did not know until we were doing this episode, and I did a little bit of background reading and research. So his character in this is a character called Weasel. That's his name, and he's actually exactly the same character that he plays that we get the tiniest little snippet of in episode 1 when he's at the pod race, sat kind of watching the
and he's
the
betting on
Eve.
Sebulba, isn't he, to win the Bunter Eve race?
Which is really interesting to just kind of see this kind of completely untold character development of this guy who's just chilling on Tatooine, betting on the thing, to like freedom fighter essentially.
And I like it how they've done that. That they could have easily just put Warwick Davis in and said he's a completely different character, but they're like, no, we've already seen this man on screen. He needs to be the same character. And I like how they've done that. Because you know now that as an actor, whether it's the Marvel films, whether it's the Star Wars films, you've got really high-end actors, top actors playing small parts. And they know by taking that part, they won't have another part later on of like a big character. That is them done. And Warwick Davis obviously can play a number of characters because there's need for especially costumed ones. Obviously, he can play R2 as well. Like he's played a lot of characters. But it was nice to see him as Warwick Davis in this film, and he's only in it, for about 10 minutes. But it was just really cool to see him.
Yeah, 100%. I think I really enjoyed the fact I enjoyed him being in it just because it was a cool like nod when you see his character, but having then gone and done that research and done that, it kind of elevated what they had done with him in this, to just kind of go, oh, do you know what? And I don't know if it was Ron Howard's choice as director, or whether it was the writers or who it was, as to whether or not it was written for him to come back and do, or whether they cast him and then went, do you know what? There's nothing stopping us from doing this. But either way, class. Really enjoyed that. So I guess we are now getting to that
thing left to do.
Yeah, that all important part of the video, whereby we need to score this. So I'll let you go first.
Ooh.
Get it out of the way.
I was going to see what you were going to give it. So, like Natalie Imbruglia, I am torn. So I feel like I need to give it a 6, and then I feel like a 6 is really harsh, and I should give it a 7. But I cannot get beyond the point of how Han gets his last name, gets Solo. But I do like the storyline, the actors, the film itself. It's a 6.5 for me. It's a 6.5. I'm going for the decimal point.
Okay, that's fair, and I kind of understand where you're coming from. I agree with you a little bit.
I can't give it more. I gave Phantom Menace like a 6, and then I changed that to a 7 after you gave Phantom Menace a 9, which is absolutely ridiculous.
If you guys haven't seen it, go watch it because it's a great video.
If I gave a 10, Attack of the Clones, I think I gave an 8, and I just feel like this isn't on. Of the reviews we've done so far, this isn't of the caliber.
No, listen.
So I'm going to go 6. I'm sticking. I feel safe. 6.5.
Consistency in scoring is all we ask in this. And as long as you explain your rationale, I don't think. I mean, people will argue with you, but at least like you're backing it up with some validity. So fair enough.
Yeah. 6.5. What your score is?
I give it a 7.
Okay.
For the same sort of reasons as you have laid out. If you had asked me the first time I watched this, I reckon I would have given it a 4. And I'll be brutal. But I think I can get past the name thing. It's always going to be slightly jarring for me. It really is. But I can get past it. I can get past some of the other minor kind of bad points of this movie, low points of this movie. But I think that, like you said, it's not a bad movie. I wouldn't call it a bad movie, which I would have done previously. I wouldn't call it a bad movie, but it's definitely not of the caliber of a Revenge of the Sith for me. It definitely is a subpar in that respect. So I think a 7 for me is a fair score. I think if the scale went up to like an 11 or a 12, I'd maybe score it slightly higher. But yeah, 7 out of 10 from me.
No, I think that's fair enough.
Cool. Listen, guys, that is our review. That is what we thought of Solo. Obviously, we could have chatted for hours, but that's kind of trying to be as concise as we can for you. So let us know down in the comments below whether you agree, whether you disagree. What would you have given Solo out of 10? Because we would genuinely love to know, and love to get your thoughts and feelings on it. If you've made it to this part in the video, thank you so much for sitting and watching all the way through with us. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We are getting up there now. We're really starting to build the channel, so massive thank you to everybody. And we've got a lot of really, really good content coming at you really soon, so please keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you don't miss out. And other than that, all that is left to say is we will see you guys really, really soon in the next one.
Yeah. May the force be with you guys.